Hello, welcome back to another Pen Talk. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for following me. There's a few thousand of you doing that, and I think that's great. I appreciate it. And hopefully my videos do justice to your support. Anybody who's watched my channel knows I love PenBBS pens, and I continue to add to my 100 that I already have. And the 480, I think, was an excellent new model introduced this year, and it's near the end of the year. It's the day after Christmas. And these three pens, along with a few others, arrived today. 456 in smog, how could I say no? Do I have a lot of 456s? Yes. Are they all inked up? No. Do I enjoy the ones that are inked up? Yes. Do I think they're great and one of the better designed ergonomic pens that I've ever used? And I would say yes. Like the Aurora 88, the original vintage one, like the Schaefer Balance, like the Parker 51, which has been replicated and duplicated and mimicked many, many times, and they're all great. So then we have two 480s, one in smog, which we need to compare these two smog pens so you get an idea of the variety of the smog finish. And then the 480 in clear. And to me, I am in a mission, a goal, to get every PenBBS pen in clear. To me, clear allows you to really see the design of the pen, the way the different parts fit together, and to appreciate the engineering that went into making the pen and all the different pieces that are machined or pieces of metal that are put together to eventually make a great writing instrument. Well, here are the PenBBS pens that I purchased and I'm putting into my December pen acquisition category. There are a lot of finishes that I love that PenBBS does. In fact, there's not too many that I don't love. But smog to me is just an amazing finish with those ribbons of white in the very crystal clear acrylic. If you're, obviously the 456 is going to be filled with ink, so the ink color is going to change the way that that barrel looks. In the 480, you can use that cartridge converter, which I left in, or you could also eyedropper that pen. And the clear version is another one that I just find very intriguing. So some people collect cars, some people collect vintage motorcycles, some people collect a lot of everything, Jay Leno, that has wheels on it. But thankfully I collect fountain pens and enjoy all the different variety and versions and models and et cetera, et cetera. And I'm extremely grateful that PenBBS is able to make an incredible variety of pens. You can see that medium nib that I buy whenever I get a chance because I have enough of the Mine Fude fine nibs, and I'm not a fan of the rounded extra fine that they've come out with, or has been around for a while, but now it's a little bit more available than it used to be. So that's just a phenomenal resin and a phenomenal finishing, machining. Fit and finish has never been an issue with any PenBBS pen. They've changed the converter, but I'm certain it's just they've sourced it from another location. You know, give or take. I like it better because it doesn't have that spring in it, and I'd never like that. And it has all the other bits and features, which I think is good in a converter in a pen of this quality, but certainly at this price point, it's a phenomenal buy. So one thing that I've always appreciated about PenBBS is the fact that they give you an upscale converter. It has a large opening in it, which I think is just great for ink flow. There's no reason for a small opening with the difference between the ink reservoir and the feed system out to the nib. The bigger, the better. And obviously, I've played around with a number of different nibs, and the flow has been excellent in all the ones that I've tried in this system. And the clarity of that resin is just excellent. There's nobody that does it better. There are many people that charge you more money for it. The fact that they use O-rings in almost every one of their pens, except I think it's the 352, but then that's not one I would want to eyedropper because of the way the barrel comes apart. You have a nib assembly which unscrews, and if you get the parts kit, you can get tons of these nib assemblies. Sometimes the nib pulls out. For the most time, I say like 80% of the time, I'm able to pull out the nib and feed relatively easily with a gripper on both pieces. If I have any trouble, then I soak it in a little bit of water and soap solution, and that gets the other pens apart. I've never had one I couldn't take apart eventually, and the fact that they put O-rings on those, on that nib assembly, again, they just, yeah, it's a bunch of pen nerds that love engineering, love manufacturing, understand it, and do great things. And they always have excellent engraving on their nibs. It just makes life nice for us in the pen community that enjoy these, I would call them kind of works of art. There is a metal screw in there, but I've not had any rusting, so it appears they've gone to some corrosion-resistant steel, hopefully a nice 18/8 stainless steel. And you always have a cap band. I'm not a fan of this acrylic extending beyond the cap band. I like the 308 and the other models, like the 456, where the metal cap band extends beyond there, because over time that is a period of cracking. But I have had this cap band come off, but it's very easy to glue back on again, so it's no big issue. And here we see PenBBS has promoted a little bit as their two-tone nib. It's certainly a very, very attractive nib. It ranks up against any nib in a $30 pen that I've ever come across. And as we go to the Smog, the 456 is the one where the ribbons are pretty thin, consistently thin throughout the pen. But in the 480, you'll find blotches or more density, and it's consistent throughout the pen. So it's interesting that they've married up the different bits and pieces, and if you've seen some of the images on Etsy, you'll see these by the thousands that come off of the lathe. If we uncap them, you'll see that that same theme is continued on to the section, which is another thing that PenBBS has done with every pen. You don't find any generic black sections that they use in all their pens. So each of the sections matches up the finish of the pen. And here we can get a good look at the two nibs that they've come out with. The M is the newer nib. The two-tone is the older one, which is like a mini Fude. A little upturned, very minor. And the medium is a nice rounded tipping material on there, which I just enjoy writing with. I've not had a PenBBS pen that I don't enjoy writing with. Some may require a little bit of effort to get the flow to the level that I like, but then I like a nice heavy ink flow. There's been some discussion about the plastic liner that's at the top of the cap. I think it's in there to seal off the screw, and it has thin walls, so it doesn't preclude you putting in a little bit larger nib, which the 308 sometimes had an issue with longer number 6 nibs. You can see how that screw holds in the clip. There's no finial because this cap is one piece. We can see on the Smog 480 that the way that insert is in there, there's plenty of room for the nib to slip inside of there, so it doesn't restrict the size of the nib. And if you look at the 456, you'll see there's really a few millimeters of gap between the end of the PenBBS nib. So again, it will accommodate those longer number 6 nibs if that's what you desire. I did get 7 pens the day after Christmas, and they shipped a little bit differently. This one I actually got tracking on eBay, and the value there is more than it needs to be. Well, it's about right. I paid more than that, but then value is value. But inside I was quite happy to see the 2 pens that I bought. We'll just look at one of them. They were wrapped in a lot of plastic. If you see this, you'll recognize what the pen is. You know, your ubiquitous Wing Sung box. You open this up and inside is the pen. Those of you that watch some of my videos may realize that I misplaced my 601 pump filler. So that's great. So it has a way to take it apart, some extra silicone grease. The instructions, which I've shown in other versions of this pen, so you have to take it apart and grease it. The pens are in great shape. They're very well made. I'll play around with some nibs. You know, to me, this is probably the best filling system that I've come across. You know, it pumps very easily. 3 pumps will fill it pretty much full. You can see that breather tube in there. So that's where the ink gets pulled up from. So overall, a good buy. Over time, I've gotten quite a few of these little tubes of silicone grease, a converter full of grease. Probably more I still have in boxes. The instruction manual was nice because it's updated to be exactly appropriate for this pump filler. And it shows you how to fill it. I assume that's 5 or 6 pumps, and I've said, like usually 3 or 4 will fill mine. And then the other thing that's nice is it talks about lubricating the piston over time and flushing the section out. So I just think that's really nice that they've included it, and it's visual. So if you reading of Chinese is lacking, the visuals should serve their purpose. And the other package is a pen that one of my viewers said, hey, you should try this out. So I did. It's the Wing Sung 613. I got it in 2 colors, kind of like a mustard brown and a lake blue or a light blue. It was pretty accurate on the website. But one of the things that I noticed when I took them out of their plastic sleeves and pulled off the cap, you know, on the 601s, there's a jewel on the top here to indicate that it's the pump filler. If the 601 has metal here, it's the old style vacuum-matic filler. If you take these apart, you'll see it's a nice hooded nib. That one is fine, but this one is not at all in there correctly. So I wanted to show you the as received condition, and you know, quality control is not the best, but I'm not concerned because I'll take it apart and reorient it and put it in working order. And what's nice is they unscrew and they have some really decent piston converters there. No aromatic filler or other fillers that some people may not like, and I can understand that. Just so there's no confusion over the colors of the 613s, yes, lake blue and yellow. So here we are, it's realigned. So this section took a lot of effort, a gripper on both sides, and a tremendous amount of effort to get it to unscrew for the first time. And I've had some challenges taking the sections off of the 51, Jinhao 51, which is a very, very similar design. You know, there's that nice feed there with a lot of fins on it. You know, the whole thing just kind of pulls apart. I'm not going to orient it because it's I went through that already, so I know I can easily reorient it. You know, and that's a nice thing about these pens is they are somewhat user-friendly. And it does have what appears to be like an ebonite feed, very similar to the 618 feed, which has worked very, very well. And it's just a plain tubular nib in there. That's how they come apart. The other thing I like about the design is that's a really open converter there, which fits very well over there. So that's going to be nice for a consistent ink flow. And some of the challenges I think you have with some inks is where there's a restriction between the converter and the feed system. Sometimes ink gets hung up, and this one shouldn't have an issue like that, and it also has a nice ink capacity. You might say that looks like a great pen to eyedropper, but there's a hole in the end of the barrel. So it's certainly not going to be eyedropperable unless you decide to close that up, which shouldn't be too hard to do. You know, put some drops of glue down there at the bottom. You don't want to use too much because you don't want to avoid the fact that someday you might want to put the converter back in. Let's take a look inside the cap. We'll see what appears to be a nice cap liner in there. And there is like a notch, kind of like you might have on a slotted screw there. I think maybe that whole plastic assembly there, that's the cap liner, is screwed into this finial at the top. It's my theory. And you can also see those little metal fingers that catch on that clutch ring on the barrel to make the push to cap feel very secure. It looks like it should keep that nib pretty wet. The engineer in me just couldn't say, well, you could unscrew the inner cap liner, and it is a one-piece unit, and this is that top finial that holds the clip in, and this is pretty much the design that Parker first put in their initial Vacuumatic when they did that design. And the other thing that's nice is this cap liner fits very well, so it should make a nice secure seal on that section. So kudos on the engineering of the pen, but I think a lot of these pens are done the same way, and that's good. These are two similar pens. Yeah, they're both in the 51 style. The Tommy was one I reviewed a while ago, but this is definitely more blue than the 613, which is called Lake Blue, but I guess when you put that in there, it kind of means there's a little bit of green. At least my eyes see a little bit of green. And then the Tommy is a little bit more blue. Both of these are pull-off caps. And we'll see a very similar section, but then the Tommy has different dimensions to it. And also that nib is really extended out a little bit. Not really semi-hooded, but certainly not as hooded as the 613, which is more reminiscent of the original 51. Then the Tommy is going to show up in one of my year-end videos if I ever get around to making them. I've added some new pens to the comparison. Arriving in the mail yesterday was the updated 601, and also that nice Lake Blue color. There's a 601. Here's a 613 with that orange ink in it. Here's the Tommy. And here's another 601 that actually has an A after the end of it. So I just figured I'd give a quick overview of this one, which has these blue jewels top and bottom, and the one at the bottom is a new addition to this upgrade of the model. Pull-off cap, same nice large ink window, same hooded nib, so there's no change to that. So you may say, what's a 601A? Well, pull off the cap and we'll see. It's that Triumph nib, or that tubular nib, or how many other ways you want to describe it. And again, that same kind of large ink window. And that also has a jewel at the top, but it's more of an ivory colored pearl jewel. And that indicates it's a pump filler and not a Vacuumatic filler. So I just thought it'd be nice to bring them together. And these colors are pretty close. I would say they're pretty much exact. And this doesn't have a jewel, so this is a Vacuumatic version. It just has a metal chrome top, and again the same large ink window, so there's no way to really tell if you misplace caps between the new version with a jewel and the old version without a jewel, because everything fits together and everything's the same size. So that's just a short little overview of some of my Chinese Parker 51 lookalikes that I have. So why do I have this pen? Well, this also comes with a kind of ornate design gold cap for north of 20 US dollars. This one's closer to 15. And I wanted to just see how the jewel looked, and it does look nice in this blue color of the pen. Yeah, it has a nice engraving around the cap band. They've been very consistent with this model, and they all write well, they all work well. And if this is a type of pen that appeals to you on a visual level or a writing perspective level, and we discussed the ergonomics and how nicely it fits in the hand, then definitely worth considering. So the 601 I just got, the new version of it, came with this mailing label, which seems to indicate it was shipped from the United States, but underneath of this is the Chinese shipping label. You can see a little bit here at the end. And inking up the 613, I've come across what I consider to be a major design and engineering flaw. Is this is as much as I can fill that converter, and I had expectations of filling it full, and I will fill it full by doing this and knocking the ink down to the bottom, pushing the air out and pulling it back in. But why is that the case? Well, the reason is because you can't put the piston all the way down in the converter. You know, as you can see, it stops there. It even stops well above that little insert from the feed. So when you pull it up, you only have that amount of travel to go up, and even if you get like an 80% efficiency in that travel, it's only going to result in no more than a half full of the converter. But like I said, I'm going to drop it down and fill it up. So my best efforts to try to use this converter and fill it. The challenge is even with the ink all the way down at the bottom, you can't expel this air without pushing out a whole bunch of ink. There's a ton of ink inside that finned feed and left at the bottom here that you just can't do anything with. So next time this pen needs to be refilled, I'll just pull out the converter, use a syringe to fill it up, and then put it back in, and I think that'll be the only way to get a decent fill. So one of my habits of a new pen is flushing it. So I'm impressed with the flow. For a hooded nib, that's a phenomenal flow, which is more than I've ever gotten out of any other hooded nib. So it'll be interesting to see when we put ink through here how it works. So what ink to go into the blue 613, which is what was decided to be inked up, is Kaweco Sunrise Orange. You may ask why. Well, the pen's going to be given away, and the new owner wants an orange ink in it. This is a color card, and I'd say it's a pretty orangey ink. Not much else going on there. And the chromatography also shows it to be orange. So inked up. I've been writing with it for a little bit, so I think I can provide a fair assessment of the writing quality. The pen is relatively light. We'll give you those weights. Yeah, it's a good slip cap. It works well, which is one of the things it's known for in this design, with that clutch ring that catches on those metal fingers we showed you in the cap. It fits long in the hand without posting, and that, you know, classic 51 section just lets you hold it anywhere. You don't feel that clutch ring at all. And as we would expect, it posts very deeply, very securely, and really doesn't change the feel or balance of the pen in your hand. In fact, I think I would prefer to write with this posted, because it just adds a little bit of weight, and the pen is a little bit light without that cap. Well, you heard the nib on the paper, especially, you know, the horizontal strokes versus the vertical strokes. And to me, this nib doesn't feel good. I've looked at the tipping material on the nib, and, you know, the tines are aligned, and I think it's as a strange polishing. It kind of looks like a little bit of baby's bottom, you know, kind of like that. but it doesn't exhibit, baby bottom aspect in the writing. It's relatively wet, which is what I expected from the way the ink flowed, or the water flowed when I was flushing it. But it just gives you a lot of feedback. And I've tried it on Clairefontaine paper, which is a little bit smoother than this, and it's slightly better, but still not to my liking. So let's do some of my traditional smoothing on this and see what we can come up with. A lot of people out there might cringe about this, but I've done this a few times with nibs. So this is a very abrasive diamond file, for doing nails with. And I think I need to take material off that nib more than just smooth it. So we're going to do that for a little bit. Of figure eights and writing on this file board, emery board, which is not as abrasive as the diamond file. And I can see that the ink flow is improving, which is what I would have expected. That now glides across the paper. It actually felt like it was catching on the paper before. I think you can hear it doesn't attack the paper like it was before. So I'm happy with the nib now. Now we're going to rate the pen. I'm going to give it an 8.2. And after working on the nib, I'm going to give it 1 check for writing. Let's look at the details. So, design is 1 check. Engineering is 1 check. Build is 1 check. Writing is now 2 checks. And it really feels good even on this copy paper. I think the look is 2 checks. And I think the value is 2 checks. To me, the value, I compare this to the Jinhao 51A, which is similar in all aspects. This pen is a little bit better made, but not significant, and it cost more than twice as much, at least for this model, similar that you would get in a 51A. So that's how I came up with my 8.2. And of course, the build with the way that one pen came with the nib off-centered, and the design with the fact that that converter, you can't fill it all the way. So overall, I'm happy that I've got to experience this pen, and I'm glad some of my viewers recommended it to me. I mean, I certainly like it better than that doctor's pen, which I think is a 616 or something, but it's a bigger model than this one. But I just really wasn't happy with that build or design either. And now that this nib has been worked on, I find it to be really nice. I mean, it feels very smooth on this Fabriano paper, which means if it's on a smoother paper, it will feel even smoother. And it lays down a nice line. And this ink is on the light side, and it still works well in this very fine nib. Now it's time to wrap up and put things in perspective. So here are the pens I got the day after Christmas. I just don't have 2 of the 601s because they're identical. So this is a pretty interesting spread of Chinese pens. Obviously, to me, the 456 is the winner of this group by a long shot. And to 613s, I have 2. One I'll give away. And I think that's fine. I don't need any more. I think I may have finished my exploration of Chinese versions of 51As. And the 601, to me, this is a classic in its own right, with a great filling system, which is pretty unique to this pen. The 480s are, say no more, PenBBS. It's a classic design. And when you put things in perspective, this clear 480 cost about the same as this 601, and both of these I got on the low end of that pricing. And even the smog version of the 480 I thought was a very reasonable price considering the quality of the finish and the look. So hopefully you've enjoyed this review of some pens I got, and maybe a little bit of a discussion on why I have them and why I bought them. And we explored the 613 in more depth because that's the unique pen of this group. Reached the end of this video, so thank you for watching. I hope you have a wonderful holiday and a fabulous new year. And that's one of the things that's always going to be there. There will always be a new year. We may or may not be around to see it, but that doesn't stop the march of time. Interesting and great TV show. But at the end of the day, enjoy what you do. Do what you enjoy. Till the next video, bye.